Alrighty, welcome back, everybody. Friggen Good Politics. Greg and Derek here with an extremely, very, very special guest. Paul
Handsome,
Taillon.
very
Handsome
handsome guy.
guest, yes. Extremely handsome.
Very.
Not special at all. A background player, if anything.
Pretty Paul. That's what we call him, Pretty Paul.
Paul is my business partner. He is our chief strategy officer at MASH, and he has worked with so many premiers, I'm losing count at this point,
Yeah,
and is very close with a federal opposition leader who will remain nameless. Everyone kind of knows it, but we don't talk about it too much because we're very secretive and
yeah,
we
yeah,
don't
yeah.
like talking about these things publicly. We're very confidential with our clients. But Paul is a very experienced political hand. He's actually going to Germany
Yeah.
in the fall here to do a conference. Paul, you want to start off talking about that conference and what you're doing?
Sure. So it's the Berlin Campaign Conference, and it's happening from September 3rd to 5th. And it's really, I think, a great gathering from what I've read up on it and from friends who've talked to me about their experience there in the past of bringing kind of the conservative family together, not just sort of, the Canadian family like we're used to here domestically, but it's really bringing the European and kind of worldwide conservative community together, talk about what's happening, talk about the best practices, talk about the state of the movement, and talk about, I think, where we can advance the cause at a very global level. So excited to speak there. A couple of friends of ours who are going to speak, and there's some Canadian presence there that's going to be, I think, well worth noting. And so we'll see what that shapes up to be like. I think we're still figuring out exactly what the format's going to look like, but I say safe to say it's going to be, I think, a good discussion. And frankly, I'm looking forward to taking in a lot of the talks as well, beyond even just what we're doing there
Yeah.
to offer our piece as Canadians. I think it's going to be a good forum for folks to check out once it goes live. So for people who are looking to potentially get their tickets if they're going to be in the area for some reason way off in Berlin, they can
Just
go to
going to
Berlin.
Berlin because it's fun.
Berlin. Look, there's some good concerts there a few
Yeah.
times a year if people are
Beer.
looking to look for an excuse to go out there. Beer,
Beer.
yeah.
There is beer
Uh,
there. Yeah, I've
Lots of
heard.
great history, obviously, in Berlin as
Oh,
well. So
yeah.
I'm looking
Obviously.
forward to taking some of that in. So folks who want to check it out, go to berlincampaignconference.com. I think it's going to be a good, a good event series with a lot of good speakers.
So
So
this is how fancy Paul is. He's a very humble prairie boy, very francophone, and he gets to speak at these conferences in Berlin because he's a big deal, and he actually does a lot in Canadian politics, and no one says anything bad about Paul ever. Like I actively hunt for dirt on this guy so I can rib him, and there's just nothing. It's really
Yeah.
hard to find. So he's a fantastic guy, fantastic friend. So thanks to Paul for coming on. He's not in the middle of an election somewhere right now, so we can actually talk to him, which is
thanks for
Yeah.
having me. It's good. It's probably long past time that I finally joined on and
Yes.
maybe find an opportunity to roast a couple of you along the way.
Yeah,
yeah,
we deserve it.
that'll probably happen. We're doing a cross country tour today because
Cross-country checkup.
people
Copyright
seem to like
pending.
that when we did it with the premiers rankings the other day. So we're going to go through and look at, hey, what are some of our stories that we're noticing across the country right now, from Atlantic Canada all the way to beautiful British Columbia. So do you want to start, Greg, with
With
Atlantic
Atlantic,
Canada?
yeah, yeah. Let's dive in. So the idea with these cross country checkups is like, we're going into the long weekend here. You're probably gonna be chatting with family and friends. Like, you want to be the guy who's got like that. Oh, what's going on? I got the secret sauce
Yeah, yeah.
on the what's going on, the special behind the scenes knowledge here. So we'll start in Atlantic Canada. Although I gave that spiel and I'm gonna be like nothing's going on. So in Atlantic Canada, not too much going on. One thing of note, Susan Holt, the newish premier of New Brunswick, is
Mhm.
trying to sell Quebec on natural gas, specifically a pipeline. Quebec has long been a sort of thorn in the side of the pro-energy crowd here in Canada. They continue to refuse, or at least keep giving excuses about why they cannot be involved in energy projects. So happy to see the Liberal Premier Susan Holt pushing pro-energy policy on in her own province and on the stickler of Quebec. Do you guys have any other thoughts?
I want to flip the script on that a little bit. I think there's two things I want to add to this. One is that I know traditionally we've seen from the West Quebec being hostile to energy development. I think there is, I don't want to use the words of a certain Liberal Prime Minister by far, but there is certainly, I think, a alliance or some kind of, I don't want to use the word bargain, but some kind of, I think, understanding or deal that we can start to communicate to Quebecers on the value for them. And certainly Atlantic Canadians are getting this through their premier of exploiting and developing their resources for the benefit of everybody who lives in this country, not
Yeah.
just people, in the West, but certainly on the Quebec and Atlantic Canadian side as well. I think the Quebecers are actually wising up to this. I don't think that necessarily this has been an overnight thing. I think that this has just not been communicated or sold to them maybe in a way that makes sense. And so for them, they're sitting on oceans of natural
Oh
gas
yeah.
in the province, and they have an opportunity to be a really important part of the Canadian energy story. And I think it's for them to see themselves in this now. What I've seen in the polling is that they actually are seeing an opportunity for them to get
Yeah.
a pipeline maybe advanced in their province. And I think if it's checks the boxes on the conditions side, it might kind of make sense for them and for the rest of the country to see this as a real nation building project.
I,
Absolutely.
I thought it was kind of crazy that you have a liberal premier in New Brunswick talking to a Quebec premier about building pipelines, and they're actually having a pretty good conversation about this. It's like, oh, it has to benefit us and whatnot, but it's not like no, like we've seen in the past. It really shows how far the country's come in a very short period of time that I thought is quite wild and crazy.
Yeah.
So that was my reflection of that. I'm like, 2 years ago, this conversation would have been wild to have.
Yeah.
That you have like Susan Holt's a pretty socialist person. Like she is not typically pro economy in her past.
High tax,
Same thing
high
like
spend.
yeah, and the same thing with Mark Carney. It's like Mark Carney has been very left wing and very socialist, and now he's super economy man. And so just the way Trump has really changed things is dramatic, and I found that to be an interesting story coming out of New Brunswick.
And not to give Trump too much credit, but I mean,
We
obviously
don't,
that's
yeah.
part of it. But I also think it's a combination of activism that's gone on in Canada. There's been a huge
Mhm.
pro-energy activist push in this country, and two, not to be glib or like about it in any way, or maybe giving too much praise awkwardly. But I think Pierre has also done like Pierre Poilievre's done a lot of work on this. Like he
Oh
and his
yeah,
predecessors to a certain extent. Like I know Stephen Harper tried pushing this, at least starting it. Aaron O'Toole a little bit to a certain extent. Andrew Scheer, obviously. But yeah, Pierre's done a really solid job of pushing that Overton window such that we've now got like, liberal premiers in New Brunswick. I mean, even during her election, she had to drop the whole carbon tax thing. She couldn't, she had to drop a couple other, I remember, hot button left wing issues because it was just too toxic because the Overton window shifted so far, which is a good thing.
It's
Mhm.
it's funny to actually see as well that to the Susan Holt and Mark Carney examples, it's the reality also of being somebody on the sidelines chirping and then finally having the reality of governing. And
Yeah.
those two things kind of coming to a head. And obviously, with the threat of tariffs being imposed on us from the south, but not just from the south, from the far east, from China, who are currently
Yeah.
imposing steep tariffs on Canadian agri-food and aquaculture products. I
That no
think
one
it's
talks
really
about for some reason. What?
well, it's a mess because of the whole genesis of how these tariffs landed sort of in our
Yeah.
in our farmers' plates. But the reality is, I think people are seeing that to pay the bills in this country, to provide the services you need, you actually got to get the money from somewhere, and that money's got to come from the economy. And typically in Canada, that biggest productive slice of the economy pie is resources.
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So
And
make
in
sure
terms of
our
like raw GDP, like we actually have more GDP worth of resources than like potential, like the exploitable, than even the United States. Like we could theoretically be richer than them on this issue. We just choose not to.
Canada is a resource-based economy, and we all tend to forget that for some reason until
Yeah.
you have to pay the bills, and you're like, oh wait.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Speaking of
Speaking
someone,
of Quebec.
oh, yeah,
Oh,
speaking of Quebec, go
we
ahead,
did
go
it at the
ahead.
same time. That's so cute.
Oh, so adorable.
All right. Francois Legault, Premier of Quebec. They have an election coming up in October, I believe. Paul, maybe you can correct me if I got that wrong. And Legault is not looking good, to put it lightly. The Parti
Looking very
Québécois,
bad.
the provincial separatist party out there, is looking to absolutely sweep them. Like I've seen some polls and projections showing literally zero seats for Francois
Really? I
Legault's
didn't.
party. Yeah,
That's
like
crazy.
zero seats, like the meme. So he's trying another reset here. He's going to do a cabinet shuffle. The classic, like, party now having no idea what else to do. They've tried everything and everything's failed, so they hit the cabinet reshuffle button. We remember Trudeau did that a couple of times before he finally let the door hit him on the way out. But Paul, do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah, well, so the election story has to happen before October of 26, not even this year. It's actually
Oh, it's
next year.
next year.
So
Okay.
they've got time. So,
Got time.
Legault is
Yeah.
playing for time here. He's tried a few different resets. I think the issue with him, obviously, he's been sort of a presence during COVID, and some premiers and others have recovered kind of from their COVID era policies. But I think Legault, maybe the era is just sort of getting a bit stale for people who are considering what might be out there. Another province that's not boring on politics is Quebec. It obviously has a lot of sort of distinct local issues at play, like any other regional, place. Alberta is one of those places also that's very exciting on the political front, as always. But the newest, I think, dimension or play here in Quebec that's sort of making a bit of a wave. I guess there's two waves, and one. I'm not certainly an expert in the Quebec side of politics, but the PQ, the Parti Québécois, which is the Separatist Party, has been polling ahead for quite some time now. Until fairly recently, they had quite a sizable lead, and now with the entry of
Mhm.
former cabinet minister Pablo Rodriguez as the new Liberal
Yeah.
Party Quebec leader, sort of seeing a bit of a revival on that front from the you want to call it center kind of left side of the spectrum. The Quebec Liberals are traditionally actually a little more right. They actually balance the budget under Premier Couillard with sort of some tougher policies that weren't swallowed very well, and then they ended up electing François Legault. The other dimension to keep in mind here on the Quebec side is the conservative Eric Durham, the Conservative Party of Quebec leader, is running in a by-election right now. So we'll see if he's able to make any
Mm.
progress. They've polled, like Greg's pointing out here, fairly consistently around the 13-ish kind of percent mark. If he can get a seat, that actually might provide some opportunity for them to insert a more conservative flavor of voice. Francois Legault has been a very nationalist kind of voice, trying to offset sort of the PQ influence on the separatist side, and a lot of Quebecers will end up voting for the PQ not because they're separatists necessarily, but because they see it as the strongest voice and advocate in
Yeah.
Quebec. So
Right.
curious to see what happens on those fronts. There's a lot of dimensions at play here in
Yeah.
that spectrum, and I think we'll see kind of what plays out in the next year and a bit.
Can I show you something interesting? We talk about this a lot at MASH, and it's the hero's journey of
Mhm.
a business or a politician or just a public figure of any sort. And you usually find that they, like in any good movie or story, it's you have a hero and the hero is on the rise. There's something, a big problem that they have to solve and they're on the rise. And usually there's a moment in the story where there's all hope is lost. All of a sudden they have a big setback and a big failure and then they go down. And then they learn from that and then they go back up again. And that's, the typical arc of a story. You see this in politicians too. It's very predictable. And so you look at Legault, where he was in 2022, and it was quite high. It was 40%. They were doing quite well. But you can see this slow and steady decline. Like I feel like he's already had his moment at the tippy top, and then it's just kind of a slow decline over time. And you can see it in the polling. So I think the writing's on kind of on the wall for this guy, in my opinion. I don't know Quebec politics like Paul or you do, Greg, but if you just look at this, it's like the leader, everything rises and falls on leadership in politics, and this guy is falling.
Yeah.
He's not
Yeah.
rising anymore.
It's
Like, what is
hard
he
to
gonna do?
see. Hard to see it climb back. Once you do see a leader fall below a certain level of support, you can often kind of see that we've seen this on either side of the spectrum, really. It's hard to see the leader come back from that deficit or that drop in
Yep.
polling. There's times when it's happened, but it's often more the
It's
exception than the rule.
really rare.
Yeah. And
Really rare.
usually you need some like big social upheaval, like with Doug Ford, which we'll talk about next. Prior to COVID, he was like on the outs. Like everyone thought it was going to be a one and done premier. And then during COVID, he like perfected his like, oh geez, golly shucks, guys. I'm always able to come back with a sorry kind of thing that he's built and was able to come back from that. Now I don't think he ever hit like 17%. It was never that low. That Legault's at now, 17-ish. But so you usually you require some big, big like social cultural moment to come back from something like that.
Yeah, like Trump or something, like the
Yeah.
liberals. But
Yeah.
they had a new leader too.
Yeah.
Hey, speaking of Ford, that's our next thing. He's getting pretty snuggly here with Mark Carney at
Yeah.
the cottage.
Cottage buddies. Geesh.
Yeah, it's like stayed overnight at the Muskoka cottage, solving the world's issues. Some of these quotes are pretty wild to me.
Yeah.
Full disclosure, Carney stayed at my place. We had dinner. We were up till 12:30 at night chatting in front of the fireplace, solving all the world's problems. This is pretty cringy to me, to be honest. Like it's going to be hard when Ford has to go hard against him on something when he's like, "You're the best." We're like, if there's any like BFF moment, like this is it, right?
Yeah.
And but it's very useful. Like this, I get the strategy of this is useful, but there's the other side of it where a premier has to actively oppose the prime minister very often, and I feel like he's setting himself up to be like, Doug, what are you doing on this? I thought you were best friends with this guy. Now you hate him. So it's like he's the most humble person you'd ever want to meet. And can I also just say this, talking to different people over Stampede about Mark Carney, I get the opposite opinion. of Mr. Carney. I think with other leaders, he's very good, but with regular people and staff, I hear the exact opposite.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
So I think that will come out in time with Carney, but so far these two are having a bit of a love-in. Any thoughts from you guys on this?
I wonder, like, were they drinking White Claws by the fire? Is that what they were doing?
You can only imagine.
Oh, and like their one piece snuggies. Like, I'm
Oh yeah.
so curious what that
Just
looked
the
like.
just the imagery he used here, just like I'm surprised there isn't more memes about this. Where's all the memes? But
It's summertime, so the meme makers are on they're on
yeah,
holiday.
they're on holidays. That's right.
This is very, I think it's very typical of Ford, and I'm not saying this in a bad way or in a pejorative way. I think it's just this is sort of how he waxes poetic on friends of his when he's in that mode. And right now, I think he's in relationship building mode, and he's trying to see what can get done with Carney on that front. I think, frankly, I'm not saying this is necessarily going to be his play, but I think a lot of people are waiting to see what happens with Carney, and then that's our next topic. So not to scoop it, but we'll see if time has any impact on that relationship and on the others that he's kind of forged in the immediacy of his prime ministership.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
don't know if he's trying to do this like be good buddies with him so that he'll get what he wants. Because I know he wants approvals for things like mines and stuff like that. He talked about that during his like what was it, February election stuff, approving all kinds of stuff. And then so maybe if Carney reneges on that, he can go, "Oh man, like you were my buddy. I thought you were my buddy. We were pals." Like, he could do that romantic scorned lover thing. I don't know, like or if he just genuinely like likes the guy and this is just how it's going for him. I honestly, it's very hard to tell.
Yeah, I don't know what game he's playing, to be honest. Okay, I do know what game Bonnie Crombie is playing. It's all so Bonnie
Yeah.
Crombie, she's very bad, and
Yeah.
so it makes the Liberal Party very not a threat in Ontario, which is why Doug Ford can kind of do whatever he wants, and he's the emperor of Ontario forever. So this is the latest on Bonnie Crombie. I just saw it this morning, and she's facing a leadership vote in her party. And so she is using Liberal dollars to advertise basically herself
Yeah.
and to liberals across Ontario to vote for her. And people are upset that, grandma donated her $50 to the party, and that's going to ads to save Bonnie Crombie's skin, who got smoked in the last election in
Yeah.
Ontario. Doesn't go over well. And they're using this interesting firm here that they do a matching technology online. It's called Data Sciences, and they've already been paid $1.13 million this year to do work for Bonnie Crombie and the Liberals. So that is of interest. So this is the game that Bonnie is playing. It's her, and she's talking about connecting with the grassroots. That's sort of like their way to get around this thing. Is like, oh, we're just talking about connecting with the grassroots, but it's all about Bonnie Crombie and presenting her in a better way. So
Yeah.
is this fair or not fair to
I think
criticize her for
that's
this?
completely fair. I mean, like, I was shocked, literally shocked as an Ontarian when she didn't resign the leadership on election night. I couldn't believe it. Like, Merritt Stiles gained something really, at least something substantial during that campaign. Like, Bonnie, like, I mean, in terms of seat count, I don't even know what they're at right now, but I believe they gained like a couple. But in terms of like, uh, efficient vote share, it was a disaster. So and in the face of this supposedly like terrible Doug Ford, who everyone should be able to beat easily, it was just embarrassing. So and I think it's further embarrassing that she's after that now having to try and sell herself back to her own, not even to Ontarians, but just
No,
like
just your
specifically
party.
to her own members. Like that's yeah, that's bad news bears for her. So I mean, I honestly, I think there's a leadership coming up for them at some point soon, but I don't see her surviving another like I don't want how long out? Maybe a year. I don't want to say 6 months, maybe till Christmas, but I
Mhm.
could see her gone within a year.
All criticism is fair in love and politics, and I think kudos to the PCs. They know how to bury an enemy, at least during an election campaign, and they did that fairly well during this campaign. So, they have their square sites focused right on the Liberals for the 2 years prior to the election, and were relentless in pursuing that enemy, and they took care of it, much like the Conservatives took care of Trudeau. In
Yeah.
that sense, that the federally, when we focus on an enemy, I think fairly well conservatives can have a very effective, impact on making sure that that enemy doesn't last too long.
Yeah.
So even the Liberal Party made a few gains, I think, without without her, being able to actually be an effective leader, even from the outside. There's instances where that's happened before, but she's not been able to, I think, rally enough troops here. So we'll see what plays out. Maybe we're all to be proven wrong, and the firm
Yeah.
she's working with, Data Sciences, which is well known to a lot of liberals, is maybe they'll have some kind of ace up their sleeve, but I'm not sure I hold out a lot of hope for her.
Probably not. Like,
Yeah.
how much data science can overcome poor leadership? I don't know.
Yeah.
That's the trick. Speaking of leadership, I was going to say poor leadership, but Carney seems to still be winning in at least public opinion. I think this is still going to go on for a while, but Canadians say the country's moving in the right direction. 56% of people say right direction. Few unsure, and then 31% the wrong direction. So uh, he's still like, despite lots of bad things happening all around him, his popularity and what he's saying still seems to be resonating. Uh, Paul, to you, what do you think of this as being someone very informed on federal issues?
The honeymoon is fairly unsurprising. I think people expect that he'll get some time to try and adjust. And let's be honest, Carney, as much as he is still surrounded by the same team as Trudeau and is pursuing, in some ways, a few policies that are similar to Trudeau, a lot of what he's proposed in the window of the election was seen as change. I mean, he stole a lot of the conservative platform and ran on it. And
Hmm.
so the conservatives now have the job of trying to hold him to account on that and saying, all right, you promised this during the election. Let's hold you to your word and make sure you actually get it done. Now, there is a window of time in which he can get, some public buy-in to be able to try and make some change. And I think, like the leader of the conservatives has said, if he is to make those changes and do things that are positive for the country, they're not going to stand in the way of that. They're going to support that and make sure that those things get done. That's, if he wants to actually get a pipeline built, a lot of skeptics on that. If he actually gets it done or moves in that direction, then great. Nobody should try and stop that for the sake of petty politics, but we should try and obviously make sure that he is true to his word, whether that's on the housing plan, whether that's on taxes and inflation, whether it's on resource development and major projects. We got to make sure this guy kind of sticks to what he's promised. So how long that honeymoon's going to last, I'm not sure. I would have assumed at least probably 6 months, and that brings us into kind of the fall session, where if Pierre Poilievre is successful in the by-election and then has a
He
chance to
will
get
be.
back in.
Spoiler, he will be.
Let's hope. No, you never take a victory. We never take any victory for granted, and we should remember that, especially as conservatives, no
Good
matter where
mindset,
we are
Paul.
at. It's important for us to never take anything as a win, foregone conclusion. But obviously, we hope we'll be successful. And if he is to win that and go back into session, then he'll have an opportunity to prosecute Carney very fully on the floor of the House of Commons, and then that'll hopefully put him in a good position, I think, to start to tear a bit of the shine off of Carney and make sure that we're in a place where we can, get through the leadership in January and get back to the job of proposing what Pierre has, said is a government in waiting. If we can get to that place as an opposition, I think that's a very good place for conservatives to be. It was effective, obviously, in the prosecution of Trudeau, too effective, and so we have to obviously turn our guns to the new guy. No,
The reason why I don't think this honeymoon's going to last is he's talking a big game, but we still don't really see any major change. Like, the talk is very different, but I feel like the
Yes.
results are very the same, if not worse. Like, even you think about legislatively, it's like, well, sure, the carbon tax is gone. That was a while ago, but you still have Bill C-69. You still have the emissions cap. You still have the
Tanker
EV
ban.
mandates, the tanker bans. Yeah, all these things are there. And then this story came out that Carney's going to outspend Trudeau. So you already have a massive fiscal problem in Canada. The cupboards are bare. Inflation is going up because we're overprinting money and inflating the entire currency of for Canadians, and it's just going to increase. So they've talked about cuts, but all they're talking about is cutting the growth in spending. So it's still going to grow substantially, but it's like we're going to slightly. That's not a cut. That's just like not. It's just spending slightly less
to be 100% clear,
than
and
the.
I'm pretty sure Pierre has pointed this out as well yesterday, that Carney is still planning to spend quite a bit more than Trudeau. And some of that spending, you can argue over the merits of it. Certainly, if it's defense, we certainly want our
Yeah.
men and women in uniform to have the
Mhm.
resources that they need to defend our country. But let's just be clear. Carney is currently at a very baseline for this year, proposing to spend quite a bit more than Trudeau, and even into 28, 29 is projected by this article's numbers. And I think these are based on the platform and the current kind of adjustments following the pronouncements since, that they're going to
Mhm.
spend even way more than Trudeau was planning to spend. So if your thought here was that by electing Carney you would get less spending, you may not have voted for what you thought you were voting for.
Yeah. It's a couple of points too. Like, A, it's summertime. Polling doesn't really change too much in summer unless something crazy happens, like
Yeah.
major scandal or like a resignation or something like that. Two, yeah, like people will naturally give the new leader a chance. That's just what happens. You get
Yep.
about 6 months, regardless of who you are, to prove yourself, and then if you can do that in that time, it might work out for you. But yeah, Mr. Carney's window is running out, especially considering he took the summer off. He chose not to do any major things other than some talking during the summer. And I don't blame any politician for wanting to take a holiday, but like we were told this is the greatest crisis of our age and we're on summer break. It's like, okay, well,
Yeah.
then that may very well come back to bite you in the butt. The other thing is, and we talked about this last in our last show, Derek, like from the progressive side as well, things are starting to fray. Like I'm seeing a ton of like TikToks and people on Instagram and Twitter saying like, Carney's better than Pierre, but he's still like he's doing all these terrible things that we don't like as progressives. So it's like, how long
Right.
does that last? Like, do progressives just keep going along with that? Like, do they just keep, licking the boots and accepting things as they are? Or is there a revolt? My gut is like a lot of those voters are waiting for what the NDP does. Do they
Correct.
choose a new leader that's like within my like dark horse hope was that like NES, like Nader Erskine Smith was gonna like defect and become the NDP leader because I think he would be like a genuinely actually good NDP leader. Maybe almost too good, but maybe he doesn't quite have the profile to do that yet. I don't know.
It's a very big tent, and I suspect it's about to shrink a little bit over time, as you've said, Greg.
Hmm. Yep. Yeah. Like if that's the liberals' biggest risk factor is having the
Yeah,
NDP surge.
yeah,
And then they lose big time because
yeah,
Pierre's coalition, I think, is going to hold well, and it's yeah, just a matter of time. I think
yeah.
what we see here. So, uh, on another topic, this is just more fun, but this came out last night, so we absolutely have to talk about it. Trudeau's dating Katy Perry.
We don't
Wow.
know. Might just be friends. They might just be going out
Oh
for a
yeah, they're
little hang.
yeah,
And
romantic dinners in Montreal at the fanciest restaurants. I don't
let me
know.
be one of the people to wish the former prime minister very well on a career finally outside of politics where we can allow him to spend more personal time with some California girls who are unforgettable. And
Great song, great song.
Great reference. Thank
Is she
you.
wearing Daisy Dukes? That's part of the song, right?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this is them and their fancy little thing here. I thought the comments on Instagram were hilarious. Where's the Instagram stuff? Yeah, so this one guy saying that good on him, he's doing side quests now. Um, working overtime for his kid in the music career.
Yeah,
That's an
true.
interesting, potential move there. But hey, good for our former prime minister, able to get out there and after tough relationship issues and date one of the biggest stars ever. I will say my wife mentioned or like Trudeau over Orlando Bloom. Like, come on, Katie, what are you
Yeah.
doing? She can't stand Trudeau, just can't stand the look of his face. So and she's like, what does Katy Perry see in this guy? And I'm like, he's a former prime minister. He's got great hair, all this stuff. And she's like, but I just can't. Like Orlando Bloom's the guy, like Pirates of the Caribbean. Like, come on,
Legolas.
Legolas. Like, how do you
Yeah.
compete with that?
Yeah.
But Trudeau, to his benefit, good for him.
Yeah.
So we just had to say that because that was just too funny. You guys have
I
anything
like
else
I
on
like
that?
through gritted teeth. Wish him all the best.
I
Greg's wishing.
genuinely like I just it's hard to be mad at the guy now that he's gone as much. It's
Yeah,
like he now can't ruin people's careers and lives and tax us up the wazoo.
yeah.
Now it's the other guy doing that. So I just don't like. Am I upset by the legacy of what he's done to our country? Absolutely.
Hmm.
And but on a personal level, and I wish he never would have been prime minister. But of course, on a personal level, you just can't. Um, you can't totally crap on the guy for going to live his life after he's kind of
Yeah.
closed this chapter. So
Yeah. And he climbed some big mountain with his kid and like, hey, he's
Yeah.
living his best life finally. So good for him. Okay, we
Fair.
can leave that one, but it's like you just can't not talk about that one. That just came up. And Katy Perry's like she's kind of a big name. This one, speaking of crapping on people, Lob
Yeah.
Canoe, our boy. We
What
were
the
we were
heck,
just
bro?
we were praising him so much, and
Yeah.
now he's turned the other way. Not cool, Wob.
Yeah.
He's saying no.
Sadtrombone.mp3.
Yeah. Exactly. So Wabkunu was all pro pipeline, and he's talking about a pipeline to Churchill, Port of Churchill, and this was all sounding good. And now he's saying, nope, we're not doing it anymore. Citing indigenous consultations, and we need consensus with those things moving forward on major infrastructure projects. So he's pouring a lot of cold water on what was once a very hot pipeline discussion out of Manitoba. Paul, what do you make of it?
Wob is one of these characters who has been one of the most pleasant surprises from the left side of the spectrum that I've seen for quite a while. So I've been glad to see him pronouncing himself on the side of economic development. He was one of the first, if you guys recall, on the provincial side to call for a boost up to the 2% NATO military spending.
Mhm.
He has defended the Canadian flag from a very earnest and I think kind of individual point of view. A lot of Indigenous people, see their relationship to the country in different kind of states. And I think Canoe can be a really effective bridge builder from that side. And frankly, it's just been pleasant to see somebody from the NDP side
Yeah.
be a positive voice for economic development, right? So I think that, honeymoon, another honeymoon, had to be seen as ending soon enough. And so I'm not surprised to see him, at some point have to give something to the left side of his base who might not be as fond of him talking about pipelines and exports. But look, it was a good thing going for a while, and maybe we'll have more to come on that. But it certainly is interesting to see now him kind of change course a little bit on this and speak to the other side of his coalition and his party.
Yeah.
So that's the thing we were talking about in the show notes here is this. So he was doing very, right-leaning type of things, and his base was probably being like, "What the F, Wob? You
Yeah.
need throw us a bone here. Indigenous consultation, environmentalism. We hate fossil fuels. That's the thing that, again, you were noting, Greg, about the progressives. They hate fossil fuels. Like for the past 15 years, it's the death of anything fossil fuels, resource extraction. Like the NDP, we sort of forget they had this thing not so many years ago called the Leap Manifesto that they
Yeah.
signed onto. This was in the Jack Layton days, and the Leap Manifesto calls for a giant leap where we basically don't go anywhere anymore. We all have community gardens. Modern agriculture isn't needed anymore because we all have sort of gardens and we can goods now, and you don't need to travel. How dare you travel south for the winter and enjoy a hot vacation with your family? You don't need to do that because of the environmental crisis. And so, like, there's got to be a lot of progressives really swallowing, this hefty pill of
Yeah.
pro pipeline resource extraction across the country that the whole nation is sort of aligned around. And you got to know that progressives in Wobb's base are kind of like, dude, no, we're not going
Yeah.
to support you anymore. But he's got a lot of popularity there, but obviously he's feeling the heat.
Yeah. I do
That's the
wonder if he
game.
even had threats from within his own
Happen.
caucus, like we will defect or leave or whatever if you do this. So I wouldn't be I haven't heard anything about that. This is pure speculation on my part, but I
Mm,
wouldn't be shocked to hear that that was a thing.
yeah. People forget that there's these things called caucus meetings where all of your
Yeah.
MLAs or MPs or MPPs come and they have a voice with the leader of the party and they say, hey, we hate you for this. Please change.
Yes.
And it's all behind closed doors, and I think it's actually a good process, but that's how they express themselves. And there was probably something there. You don't have to read between the lines too much to figure that out.
Yeah.
So interesting in Manitoba. He still has some MOUs with Saskatchewan and the Arctic Gateway Group, so I think that's good. And so there's some positives there still, but he's obviously winding it back a little bit here.
And for that, we throw him in the sin bin this week. That's a
Yep.
4 minute major.
Oh yeah, no, that's a 5 minute major game as well. No, he's been good on other things. So yeah, you're right. Double minor is
Yeah.
fine. I was gonna
I'm
give him
not
five in a
ejecting
game.
him.
Yeah, five in a game is too much.
Yeah.
Suspension, not suspension worthy.
Not
So
yet. Not yet. We'll see what happens next.
if it's the Toronto Maple Leafs, it would be five in a game, and then like two
Obviously,
game
yeah.
suspension because the league hates the Toronto Maple Leafs. That's
Yeah.
that's my opinion of it.
Yeah. We'll
So
see if he goes full Sam Bennett on us.
yeah, probably. So kind of going more west here, Saskatchewan. Mo seems to be cooking along nicely here. I think what's interesting about Mo is just his staying power, honestly,
Yeah.
for a guy like you saw Legault, who's been around about the same amount of time. Mo's his popularity is still pretty good. He's playing the Team Canada sort of
Yeah.
thing, and I just thought it was interesting. Carla Back, who almost won this last election, she's pivoting her messaging quite a bit to the old elbows up thing. And I just have seen this in several posts from her recently. And I don't know if this is a good idea for. I was going to get your guys' opinion on it, but she's basically saying Scott Moe is being basically Trump's buddy and not putting elbows up and not being part of Team Canada, which is completely untrue. But this is her line of messaging that she's trying to do, time to the separatist thing and all that. It's for me, it's a bit of a stretch and makes her seem too liberal, in my opinion. But maybe that's what she wants. Maybe that's good among a lot of people in Saskatchewan right now. What do you guys think?
I'm assuming
I
that. Oh,
You go
sorry,
ahead,
Paul.
Greg.
You go ahead because
No,
you're me.
Go,
Okay.
you.
go.
Yeah, you go ahead, Greg.
I
I'm just jumping in full throat here, but I want you to sound off first. I have maybe a very small and short perspective on this. So you go ahead.
Okay. I was going to say, because my perspective is very small as the Ontarian. I was going to let you, Paul, as the other resident Saskatchewanian, talk about it. But the only I thought I had was, like, as you say, Paul, like, she's maybe, like, her team is like, okay, we got to find some messaging that's working here. Like, let's look to other left-wing governments in Canada that are having success. Like, what's their messaging? Let's just copy it. And so they're just copying the Mark Carney language. Although I don't know. I haven't specifically like mentally like or purposefully rather like gone and looked at their at the liberal messaging like as of today and seen if they're still doing the like hashtag elbows up thing. I don't recall them still doing
Not
it.
really.
So it's like okay, so then Carla, like I get what you're maybe trying to do, but like this is like now 4 months out of date. Like what are you doing here? Can I
That's
also just
exactly
say
right.
elbows up is now like unbelievably cringe. Like it died a while ago, and if you say elbows up, like you're a loser, an absolute total loser. Like,
You're
and
a
I say that
loser.
as someone who like my wife and I have been doing the like buy Canadian, buy local, all that for way before it was cool. So like, and even my dad was I was big on it when we were young. We lived in a border town. We never shopped in the United States. We kept our money in Canada. So I'm like super pro Dominion, but like elbows up is cringe as hell. I'm sorry.
I think this is, just an attempt by the NDP to try and keep their insertion into this discussion alive. They're trying to find a wedge as well on kind of the bigger issue that people are talking about on the trade front. I don't think they really, I think this is a bit of a miss. And I think that, the premier, wisely, I think at this point, giving Carney some room on his end to try and see what he can do over the course of the next few months. That's just what you would expect a statesman and leader of the province to do. Also, the whole dynamic of saying that we won't bow down to Trump and that we'll either do one of two things: try and play heavy with the states in a time when as Saskatchewan's concerned and a lot of other provinces are concerned, we are still the number one trading partner is still the United States. And so
Yeah.
kind of keeping that in mind, like I don't think that's going to change necessarily right away, at least in
No.
the foreseeable
It'll,
future, even
it'll
despite
take
what might come
decades to change that.
Yeah. Like
Like,
easily. I mean,
it's
just
not
by
happening.
factor of our land, right? Like we're attached to them at the hip. So we have to kind of be mindful, I think, of that constructive approach that we're trying to do. We're obviously trying to stand up for Canadians for sure, but making sure that we still try to get a deal that works for Canadians and for Canadian workers first, while still expanding kind of our trade markets abroad elsewhere. So this is a bit of a missed message, I think, but I don't know what else she could be doing right now. So
Yeah.
if I were her, I would have just maybe stayed quiet and done more of a summer tour type kind of message where you're listening to people and focused on that. I'm not sure if she's done that yet. I haven't watched her socials that carefully, but I think this is focusing or leaning heavy on this isn't really, I think, going to have the impact she thinks it does.
Yeah. The only thing I'll mention here, we can keep going, is she's trying to do contrast in her messaging here. Good political messaging has contrast. I've always been
yeah.
told by a very nice senior strategist that Paul and I know. It's the ABCs of politics. Always be comparing or always be contrasting. So standing up for Saskatchewan versus not bowing down to Trump. So it's like she's trying to cast Mo as bowing down to Trump, which doesn't make any sense in this situation. This is why I think it's stupid and the elbows up thing is outdated. And then standing up for Saskatchewan, that's how Mo actually got elected, was standing up for Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
So it's like I just no, it's not working. And I met Cheryl Oates quite a few times at Stampede, who ran the campaign for the NDP in the last election, and I'm like, she's not involved anymore because I don't think she would have let this. She did a pretty good job, honestly, in that last
Yeah.
election. It was won, and I'm like, I don't think she would have gone for this because it's
No.
really it's poor.
Well, just to quickly tag on that, like another election that previous Saskatchewan election where the left-wing party had to hard tack to the right in order to even attempt to try and win. Like they had to be against the carbon tax. They abandoned a lot of the
Right.
social issues that they had been harping on 6 months before that. So again, a completely changed landscape. Although it sounds like maybe she's kind of veering back a little bit that way with now some of those staff having phased out or gone on to different things. So interesting to see.
Yeah, for sure. We're gonna have Cheryl on at some point because she has an interesting political story that
Yeah.
I think is worth talking about. Uh, more west, Alberta. Premier Smith, she had to make an interesting call here.
Yeah.
So there's basically this referendum proposal by a group, and they are trying to collect. I don't think they've collected all the signatures for it yet. But they lowered the threshold so you could collect a number of signatures and then you could have a referendum in the province, and it's the province to deal with that. But what you have here is the chief electoral officer is saying, no, we have to refer this to a judge to decide if the question contravenes Canada's constitution. And so Smith came out with her justice minister and basically said, no, stop doing this, stop
Yeah.
interfering. And this is not our intent is to hold back direct response democracy from the people. And so what do you guys think of this move? This is playing with fire a bit here in Alberta.
Well, I think the premier has to make sure that she's, giving citizens a voice in this issue. And I think that was the whole premise of what she's been pursuing on a few different fronts. And so, for her to get ahead of this, I mean, she's left with, a couple options. One is she stays silent on this and lets others fill the void as far as commentary, or she steps in and says, this is what I think Albertans expect. And I think, if her efforts to date have tried to kind of, allow a pressure release valve at some level
Yeah.
on the separation kind of piece and allowing people to actually voice their opinions on what we can do as Albertans to fight for Alberta sovereignty within United Canada. I think that this is a continuation of that effort, obviously, to try and keep that track on here. And if the ballot question, eventually does make its way to a formal ballot, the idea would be obviously to make sure that there's an opinion or an opportunity for Albertans to exercise their voice on that said
Yeah.
question. So it just follows naturally that you would expect this to be sort of taken care of. And I understand there's a lot of other kind of monkeying around from different factions, either the anti-separatist or pro-separatist groups who are trying to figure out what ballot question is going to be on, how will it be worded, what is there an allowance for more than one question on the ballot? And you're seeing a lot of kind of chirping in between those days. And I think the premier is trying to, as much as possible, you have her kind of listen to Albertans as this discussion takes place and not, force the discussion too much one way or the other.
Okay, if I was head Nenshi or a liberal, I would say she's courting separatists. She's being a separatist. She's doing all like you're being gentle on this issue, but let me challenge you, Paul. Is she courting separatists here? Is she trying to get in tight with them?
Well, she represents all Albertans. And what does the law say on referendums? It says that people who, reach a certain number of signatures are allowed to put a question on the ballot. And so
Mhm.
she's trying to endeavor that effort will be seen as seen through. So people actually have a chance to have their voice, on this issue. You don't get to decide as some kind of, you don't get to call yourself a neutral arbiter and then have your, heavy thumb weigh on the scale of saying this question can be on and this question can't be. I mean, if it fits the parameters of the legislation and the law, and I think that's what she's trying to ensure here, then shouldn't people be allowed to have their say? And in a honest and fair campaign, I think that would probably, at least today, see that question fail necessarily on the separation side of things. And so maybe she's trying to allow that process to take place, would be my counter argument. And so it can kind of be put to bed. And that way we can focus our efforts on actually what might be successful in the province as far as being able to assert our sovereignty and our stature in the country.
It's the right answer, Paul. That's what I was looking for. Because the the enemy here for me is this chief electoral officer that is trying to put his thumb on the scale here and say, no, you can't even have this question. It's going to, contravene the Canadian Constitution. And it's like, no, it's a referendum, and then the government will deal with the question after that.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think Smith is completely in her rights here, and also just in good sense to be like, no, this is not the legislation. Stop intervening in something that we don't want you to intervene with. This is not the heart and the spirit of the legislation. The legislation says people should have a say in the province and be able to do this if they have enough signatures. So go away.
Yeah.
And I was
And
like,
I,
great.
yeah.
I thought that was the right move because she does have to keep that coalition together, and that involves ensuring that those people that are very upset in Canada right now, who are very good Albertans, are not ignored. And if they want to be able to have a question put towards the people, that they have to be like everybody else. They can't be treated poorly just because somebody doesn't like them. So there, everybody.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hey,
Well, it's
last
very obvious that if they don't allow this, it's going to blow up. This
Totally.
is
Yeah.
you use the word Paul pressure release valve. Like that's exactly what Premier Smith is very smartly and wisely doing is allowing these people to have their voice. Um, it seems from the polling that it probably won't very, very likely won't end up like with a yes, like when getting over the 50% plus one threshold. But these people deserve to have their voice heard. Like calling them idiots and
Sure they do.
stupid and all this other stuff is a terrible idea. In the same way that like in any political discussion, other than like the most extreme of extreme views, like we should allow each other to voice our opinions and like people are upset. People are very
Yeah.
upset for, and especially in Alberta, they're very, very upset about the direction of the country and the governance and the laws and the bureaucracy and the red tape, and they want to have their voice heard, and they feel this is their only way.
They're democracy too.
Yeah,
Yep. If we like democracy, we have to kind of apply it to everyone. So, speaking of people that are upset, I'm just like segueing like a boss here, boys. I hope you're.
you're crushing it,
I'm
bro.
just segueing. You can't stop me. But speaking of people that are upset, Premier David Eby is very upset in our
Ooh,
West Coast edition here. So he's mad that basically Atlantic Canada, the Confederation Bridge, and somewhere else, Carney did a big announcement to cut those fees by 50%. And or I thought it was actually more than that. It says 50% here, but I thought it was way more. But anyways, cutting rates for Eastern Canada, and then BC gets no love for their ferries. And
sad.
EB's like, this is unjust. And the thing that I thought was interesting, I looked at some of the quote and the quotes, and so this is from David Eby. He's calling it the new subsidies for East Coast ferries, but not those for BC, are a symptom of structural unfairness. Have you ever heard that from maybe a Alberta or Saskatchewan premier before? Or and this is he goes on to say, not only are we paying billions of additional equalization to Quebec and Manitoba and $1 billion to Ontario, but we also have to watch the federal government show up on the East Coast and subsidize ferry users that already get a $300 subsidy per $1 that a BC ferry user gets. So wow, like David Eby is now
Right
a
wing
Alberta
radical David Eby. You heard it here first.
radical right wing unfairness, fair deal panel, Alberta
Yeah,
Next
what
panel,
the heck,
President
David
Cullen. What?
Eby?
Yeah,
It's almost like we got a new West partnership forming up
yeah.
here
Yeah,
on equalization and standing up for the West. I think the only risk I see here for EB, I think it's a smart play for him. He's actually been able to tap into this Western frustration vein a couple times, and I think he's played it successfully. The only risk here for him is that reminding people of the ferries is another reminder of his
You're
debacle
right.
on procuring Chinese ferries
yeah.
Yeah, good point.
instead of shipbuilding these locally in BC or elsewhere. I mean, there's still, I think, a bit of that stench in the air. It's not been that long since they've had to deal with the
Mhm.
PR on this issue, and I hope
Yeah.
that that they can maybe. There's been a bit of also war of words between the province and the feds on this issue too. You recall that when
Mhm.
EB was out there defending the procurement from BC ferries to get the Chinese vessels, the I think it was Christian Freeland wrote a letter saying, "Hey, I expect you to, proceed with every avenue possible to try and give these to Canadian manufacturers and shipbuilders." And then at the end of the day, what you ended up hearing was that they had actually procured, I think, a loan through the Canadian Infrastructure Bank to, I think, $1 billion or something like that to procure those Chinese ships. And I don't know if Chrystia Freeland was even aware of that at the time. So a little bit of fun background there on the ferry politics in BC. And I'm less familiar with BC politics than other experts, but it certainly is something to watch.
They should have gone with Irish ferries.
That'd been better. We should do a whole episode on ferry politics,
Yeah.
and we're not talking about Zelda or anything. We're talking about literal
Yeah.
boats in
Yeah.
Canada, and because there seems to be a ton of politics around these things. Like even in the past few months, I've seen a bunch of stories on this. It's a big deal, right? I guess we
Yeah.
have a lot of oceans and islands and everything to go to in Canada. So I don't know. Any more thoughts on this, or is that our cross country tour? We did a pretty good sweep of the nation, I would
We
say.
crushed it.
Yeah, not bad. Uh, we already did Sinbin with Wob Canoe. Sorry, Wob, you got a double minor there
Yeah,
for
you
going
blew it.
back on your word on pipelines. Do we want to do some stick taps? Paul said he had some stick
Paul,
taps.
yeah,
Greg, do you
let's
have
hear what your
anything?
stick tap was.
Yeah, just a stick tap, and I threw this on X earlier today, but I just want to say a big shout out to a friend of ours of the pod and of us here at MASH, Alexander Brown, for kind of
Mm,
launching a new show on Juno.
yes.
I am just really pleased to see a lot of good content coming from alternative kind of media providers. I still read the mainstream media. I think a lot of us still do. We have to get our news somewhere. But just the amount of smart commentary and insight coming from these alternative platforms are very helpful. And I think, look, they're not all made equally. And I think the market will obviously dictate kind of which ones perform better and which ones are to survive. But just I'm glad to see intelligent and smart voices show up on platforms like this. And I want to say stick tap to Alex for starting out there, and stick tap to Juno as well for giving him the platform to speak out and to have a chance to speak some truth into the void.
I did see that. That was awesome.
Very good. We actually stick tapped him last week too, so he's going to be
Dang.
really
Alex is getting
familiar.
wild
That's
stick
true.
taps everywhere.
Wow. No, he's a great dude. We love Alex. Do you any stick taps, Greg?
I mean, I'm gonna stick tap my wife and I because we finally got our van. We bought it.
Oh
We did it,
yeah.
guys. We're a minivan family.
Greg's van update. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah,
Greg,
it's
you got your
beautiful.
van months before mine. I'm still on the waiting list for mine, so I'm hoping to get mine soon here before the snow comes.
We're
Yeah.
all
Well,
van guys.
it was just like a thing. Like they called us out of nowhere. Like we got a cancellation. Do you want it? And we were like, yes, we would love that. Thank you.
And
It's beautiful.
birds of a feather flock together. We're all van guys. We all
Yeah.
love politics. We all
Yeah.
have families. Like
We all love the Toronto Maple Leafs.
we
Big time.
especially Paul loves Toronto Maple
Yeah.
Leafs. We know that. So Paul, who's your team? We can do sports talk now.
I'm a Wings fan because I grew up playing for the Wings and Adam hockey, and so I kind of I grew up also watching Iserman,
Stevie Y
Shanahan,
though. Stevie Y is
Lidstrom,
awesome. Yeah.
and like and even Chris Osgood for a time. I mean, like the Wings were a
Oh, yeah.
stacked team for like a decade plus,
Yeah.
right? So it was fun to
Yeah.
watch. It was fun to play
Dynasty.
for them as a kid, and then so I've always been a bit of a Wings fan. And then since moving to Edmonton, I guess about 6 years ago, I've begrudgingly kind of become an Oilers fan over the course of the last 3 years as the playoff runs have materialized. So I'm sort of a bandwagon B team Oilers fan, but always a Red Wings fan first.
Are you a
Nice.
Stuart Skinner fan? You like the goaltending situation at Edmonton? Are you satisfied?
Eh, I think it left some to be desired in the run. And look, I think if they have,
Very kind, very diplomatic. Just tell us what you think,
Yeah.
Paul.
yeah,
It's a safe
I don't think
space.
I think Skinner could have
It's a
been
safe public space for everyone to hear.
Skinner could have been pulled a little bit earlier, but I'm by far from a goaltending expert. Derek, you're more the authority, having kind of watched your kid ascend through the goaltending ranks
Yeah.
in minor hockey. But look, I think we'll wait and see kind of how the team shapes up this year, and hopefully they'll have another good run and lift the city up. It'd be nice to see the city of champions kind of hoist another title, another trophy above its
Yeah.
head.
I
I would
want it
love that.
bad.
So I love Stuart Skinner because he's a former Swift Current Bronco, which is my hometown, which is where I'm going
Oh,
this
no
weekend.
way.
So I'm gonna do stick tap to my parents for their 50th wedding anniversary here in the May.
Hey, congrats, Robinsons.
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to do. But just on Stuart Skinner, I love him. He's great. Seems like a great guy. Pretty effective goalie who moves like a 1992 Chevy. Like the dude in the net, his skating ability, his movements, very poor. Like I look at my kid and other kids, my son's age, and I'm like, if you move like that, you would be cut from all these teams like instantly. Like I can't believe he's had such a successful career and been such an effective goalie moving so poorly.
He's
It's
got those
actually
hands.
he has good hands. He's big. He just gets in the way. He does some good desperation saves. But like you compare him to like a Dustin Wolf or like some of the
Well,
other
even
goalies in
Bobrovsky, right on the opposite side, it was hard to watch the two of
Yeah.
them
yes.
Oh
kind of
my
square off.
gosh.
So
Bobrovsky is an
Bob Bob
absolute
look
wall.
Bob looks
Bob is
beautiful
an
when
ace.
his movements are just like so smooth. Like the elite goaltenders, you can watch their movements and it's just like this is just art out there. And then you see like trucker movements in Stuart Skinner, like making it happen somehow. And you're like, how does this guy make saves? He seems to make a, but like clearly he's like a category far below those guys, even though I love him. But I do wish they had a better goaltender. I will do this. You've heard it here first, folks. This is breaking news. We'll trade Anthony Stolarz, our beautiful boy, Anthony Stolarz from the Toronto Maple Leafs for Connor McDavid. We'll make that
Oh
trade
yeah.
1-in-1 trade. It's a hockey trade. It's a good deal. And Stuart Skinner, you can put him on waivers. I don't care what you want to do. Trade
Great
him for that.
deal. Greatest deal in the history of all hockey.
Cry
If not
harder, cry harder,
McDavid,
Leafs.
we'll take Drysaitel if you don't want McDavid going. I get it, McDavid's he's all right. So fair
I
enough.
don't know if I'd
But
trade Stolarz for Draisaitl. Definitely for McDavid. I don't know if I'd do it for just Draisaitl.
so there's my official trade of the day. I do have another stick tap. I was at Stampede and I was at Canadian UAVs, someone
Oh,
we've worked
okay.
with a little bit, and great company. And John Mulberg and Sean Greenwood, two of the leaders there, they said they love the pod,
Oh,
and
great.
they're like, we're
Thank
loyal
you.
listeners, we love the pod, and so I'm like, all right, stick tap to you guys. You guys are great dudes, and I hope you're very successful in a lot of the work coming up in Canada in the military space
That's
sooner
awesome.
rather than later. So there's my stick taps. Anything else, Greg? We have to cover?
The Tie Cats are on top, and it's great, guys. I know you guys are very
They're
happy
not
to
on
see.
top. The Riders are on top.
Well,
They're on
we're
top
in
in the
our
East. Team needs,
division. In our
yeah.
division.
Who's leading the league? That's what matters,
Well,
Gregory.
it doesn't
Greg's
matter
in
until
his little
playoff time.
Laurentian Eastern zone. He's not focusing on the West,
That's right.
as a lot of these guys do.
Yeah,
Hammertown's a working class town, guys. All right, that's not a Laurentian elite. Come on, come on.
you're right.
Typical Westerners. Love put us all together.
Yeah, that's funny. No, Ticats are doing just fine, but Riders are much better, and
I
that's
know,
that's
I know.
that's the real story here. I like you're like, yeah, not a big deal. Those Riders that are dominating
Yeah.
everyone, other than the Stampeders, who seem to be. Can I just also stick tap to the Bombers for finally losing a lot? I appreciate that. You've been dominating the league for how many years, destroying our poor
Yeah.
Riders, keep winning so many Grey Cups, and thanks for losing and starting to suck. We really
Same to the
appreciate.
Argos for the same thing, like one
Yeah,
and
we
five,
appreciate
whatever
those
they are. Yeah.
downfalls. Yeah,
Yeah.
I got nothing against the Argos, but you do. I get it. But it's
I
like
do only because it's like they were just so good, but no one cared. It's like, can a team that actual people care about do well for once, please?
Torontarians only care about the Argos when they're in the Grey Cup. It's just like
Yeah.
the whole season we
They
don't
show
care,
up for
and then
that
like
one day. Yeah.
Grey Cup game. Oh, Argos. Ooh. What is it thing? It's like Argos. That's their.
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, well, that's all I got, gents.
That's all I got. Paul, any
Thanks.
final words? Thank you for coming on again. Thank you for
Yes,
being with
thank you,
us.
Paul.
Thanks for having me. Won't be it obviously was the first time, won't be the last. Thanks for hosting this daily, not daily, weekly-ish, bi-weekly-ish
Bi-weekly.
pod
Bi-weekly. Yeah, we've
that I
been
get to
Firmly bi-weekly.
I just tune into these when I'm kind of either working on the car or doing stuff outside. It's a great kind of passive listen. So thanks for keeping the folks entertained and keeping everyone educated on the political happenings as they happen.
It's our
it's
pleasure.
fun.
It's our duty.
It's our
Public
sworn duty.
service.
All right, send us off, Greg.
All right. Remember, everybody, like, subscribe, tell your friends, family, coworkers, your mailman, your milkman, if you
Mailman.
still get that.
Do
People
we
you're
have mailmen in this country anymore? I don't think
mail
that exists.
people, whatever it is. Yeah, FedEx
No, they
guy.
Canada Post just doesn't deliver things anymore, and they're maybe
We'll see.
striking.
Yeah, who knows?
Yeah.
And like and subscribe, and we'll see you next time, guys. Thanks. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.